All right. Hi, everybody. This is Kayla with the SIH Second Act. I'm the communications coordinator and the person you often call. We are so excited to have you here today for our virtual class on understanding Alzheimer's and dementia. And we're really excited to be able to share some virtual classes with you guys. We have Tracy Harrent on today, which is our manager of Second Act. And then we also have Yolanda, who will be speaking, and I'll introduce her a little bit later. Some housekeeping things before we get going. First off, we have a bunch of November classes left, so make sure to get yourself signed up for those. We got about 2 of those, and then there's a craft class if you're interested in that. Also, later this week, our December classes will go live on our website, so make sure to check those out when they get up and running and sign up for them. We still have some Medicare appointments available if you're needing to check your Part D plans. Remember, you have to have those done by December 7th. And after this class is over, we will be having a survey. Make sure to do our survey. That'll come via email to you. And then also, this class will be live on our website for a while after following this class. So if you guys want to go back and review it, you're more than welcome to. And then we encourage you to ask questions, and I will show you how to do that. So to ask questions, your screen should look like this, and there is where our live stream is, and that is Understanding Alzheimer's and Dementia. And if you scroll down is where you'll ask a question. You'll put your first and last name in, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay. And then you just ask a question. And if I can spell. And then you click submit, and that'll come straight to us, and we will get those questions answered for you. So definitely, if you have a question, please feel free to ask away. And without further ado, we are going to start our presentation. Like I said, it's going to be on Alzheimer's disease, understanding it. And we have our speaker from the Alzheimer's Association, Yolanda. And we're going to let her kind of take it away, and I will share our presentation. So, all right, Yolanda, you're up.
Thank you, Kayla. Welcome to Understanding Alzheimer's and Dementia. This education program is presented by the Alzheimers Association. My name is Yolanda Simon, and I am a volunteer community educator, and I'm a part of the Alzheimers Association of Illinois chapter in the Marion office. My connection to the disease, and I was sharing this with Kayla earlier, is that my mom died from complications of Alzheimer's, as did an older sister 1 year ago tomorrow. And I presently have a sister that has an younger onset of Alzheimer's. So because of that, I am adamant about a cure. During this program, next slide, please. During this program, we're going to take a top level look at Alzheimer's and dementia to give you a broad understanding. So by the end of today's program, the goal is for you to understand the relationship between Alzheimer's and dementia, to find out how Alzheimer's disease affects the brain, to explore the risk factors and stages of the disease, to learn about current research and FDA-approved treatments that address some symptoms, and lastly, to identify association resources. You'll want to know those. In our next module, we're going to be talking about the impact of Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's is a global crisis, and you're likely hearing more and more about it in your personal lives and the news. We're going to start off by seeing what you know about the impact of Alzheimer's in the United States. If you were with me, we were doing this live, I would ask you to raise your hands, but as it is, we're going to test your knowledge. Our first question: how many Americans are currently living with Alzheimer's? Is it 850,000, 5.7 million, 12 million, or 3.4 million? The correct answer is, would you believe, 5.7 million. Barring any developments in prevention or treatment methods, this number is projected to reach 14 million by the year 2050. Currently, an estimated 50 million people worldwide are living with dementia. So, are you ready for the next question? Okay, how many unpaid Alzheimer's caregivers are there in the United States? And I might add that when an Alzheimer's patient begins, we generally call them, we generally refer to them as a care partner. And as they get progressively further in the disease, we tend to call them caregivers. So how many unpaid Alzheimer's caregivers are there in the United States? Are there 1.2 million, 8.5 million, 13 million, or 16.1 million? Currently, it is 16.1 million Americans are providing unpaid care for people with Alzheimer's or another dementia. These are not people in a nursing home. Alzheimer's impacts caregivers both at home and at work. Why? Because more than 80% of care provided at home is delivered by family members, friends, or other unpaid caregivers. Over half of employed caregivers report having to go in late, take time off, or quit altogether due to caregiver demands. These caregivers provided approximately 18.4 billion with the B hours of care last year, valued at more than $232 billion. So as you can see, this disease takes a personal impact on not just the individual with Alzheimer's, but also those who are taking care of them also. We're going to look at a 30-second facts and figures clip right now. Just in case that went rather quickly for you, Alzheimer's is the sixth leading cause of death in the United States. Every 65 seconds, someone in the United States develops the disease. And in 2018, Alzheimer's and other dementias cost the nation $277 billion. And by 2050, the cost is considered to be rising to $1.1 trillion. So if we get early and accurate diagnosis, it could save up to $7.9 trillion in medical costs. But if you're interested in finding more information about facts, you can always go to alz.org/facts. Our next module is entitled Alzheimer's and Dementia. And when we are doing this again, we're going to test your knowledge. This time, we're going to see what you know, and we're going to use true false. Our first statement is Alzheimer's is a normal part of the aging process. Do you believe that to be true or false? Well, Caleb, what do you think? Alzheimer's is a brain disease that causes problems with memory, thinking, and behavior, but it is not a normal part of aging. Let's do the next one. It too is a true false statement. People younger than 65 can get Alzheimer's. True or false? That's right. Approximately 200,000 Americans under age 65 are living with the younger onset Alzheimer's. In some cases, individuals develop the disease in their 40s and even in their 50s, if you can imagine. We're having a problem with our videos. If in our next slide, we meet Dr. Heather Snyder, and she tells about dementia being an umbrella term. We're talking about the difference between Alzheimer's and other dementias. There are many causes of dementia other than Alzheimer's. However, about 60 to 80% of all dementia cases are caused by Alzheimer's disease. There are numerous types of Alzheimer's and numerous types of dementia. Each type has different causes and symptoms. Under the dementia umbrella, of course, there's Alzheimer's, and it has probably more percentage-wise than all dementias. Another type of dementia is vascular dementia, and that has to do with a decline in thinking skills caused by conditions that block or reduce the blood flow to various regions of the brain. There's frontotemporal dementia, which involves the frontal and temporal lobes. And then, of course, there's the dementia with the Lewy bodies that is very much associated with people that have dementia with Parkinson's disease. It's important, very, very important to have an accurate diagnosis. Why? Because number one, you need to know which one you have. It's not enough just to know that you have dementia. So as a diagnosis, further testing is used to identify the specific the disease. You need the accurate diagnosis, you get better medical care, you have time with your family to make decisions about what you want to happen. In my family, when my mom had Alzheimer's and she died in 2005, my brother and I were not aware of Alzheimer's Association. So my mom went for almost 3 years with the feeding tube. If there were something that she would have had a choice, I'm sure my mom would not have wanted that. And then if you are aware of an early diagnosis, you will understand changes better, not just you, but the person that is your caregiver or caretaker in order to help you. And lastly, if you have an early diagnosis, and we're going to talk about this later, you may be able to participate in clinical studies. As a recap, we know that dementia is a general term for a collection of symptoms that is severe enough to interfere with daily life. It is different than saying, oh my, I forgot, where did I put my keys? That's not dementia. I call that a slip of the tongue moment. Eventually, that's going to come back to you. But with Alzheimer's patients, it isn't that way. Alzheimer's is the most common cause of dementia, but it is not a normal part of aging, and it is a very progressive brain disease. Next slide, please. This time we're going to go and take a look inside the brain. Alzheimer's is a brain disease. The brain is our most complex organ. It's also our most powerful organ, despite the fact that it only weighs about 3 pounds. In our next slide, there is an expert that was going to tell you about the brain has 3 parts, the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the brainstem. And of course, part of that is used for remembering, problem solving, and thinking. And Dr. Alois Alzheimer's, more than 100 years ago, of course, is named for him, came up with this thing about Alzheimer's. And what causes it? The plaques and tangles or abnormal clusters of protein fragments that built up between the nerve cells. Tangles are made up of twisted strands of another protein. Scientists are not absolutely sure what causes cell death and tissue loss in the Alzheimer's brain, but they're sure that plaques and tangles are prime suspects. So we know from the recap that more than 100 years ago, Dr. Alzheimer described specific changes in the brain, the formation of plaques and tangles. The Alzheimer's causes nerve cells to die, which leads to shrinkage in the brain. And lastly, the brain changes result in changes in memory, thinking, and behavior. And those three things kind of need to go together when one is determining whether or not you really have Alzheimer's. It's not just the loss of memory. It's when your memory, your thinking, and your behavior interfere with your daily lifestyle. In our next module, though, we're going to talk about risk factors. And this is interesting that everyone with a brain is at risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. That part is true. There are a few known factors that increase a person's risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. So we're going to see if you know which one is most common. So our first question is, what is the greatest known risk factor for Alzheimer's disease? Do you think it's genetics, family history, or age? It is age. It is not family history, it is age. Although Alzheimer's is not part of normal aging, age is the greatest risk factor for the disease. After age 65, the risk of Alzheimer's doubles every 5 years. Go figure. 32% of people age 85 or older have Alzheimer's, but just because you age does not mean that you're going to get Alzheimer's. In this next slide, the expert would have told you that in addition, there are different risks. Age is a factor, family history is a factor, our genes are a factor. And she would have told you about risk factors and deterministic factors. Risk factors can have something to do with, as we're going to talk about, if you are a certain race or family things. But then deterministic is, it's going to happen to you. And of course, you may be able to go and get a genetic test, but I mean, I don't want to do that, even though I've had a mom and 2 sisters with it. I choose not to do that. But populations at higher risks, in addition to the main risk for general population, Hispanics, African Americans, and women are at higher risk for Alzheimer's. Research shows that older Hispanics are about 1.5 times as likely as older whites to develop Alzheimer's and other dementias, while older African Americans are about twice as likely to develop the disease as older whites. The reason for these differences is not well understood, but researchers believe that higher risks of vascular disease in these groups may also put them at greater risk for developing Alzheimer's. Women are more likely than men to develop the disease, although men can get it. An estimated 3.4 million American women are living with the disease today. We know that women live longer than men, making them more likely to develop Alzheimer's. However, longevity and lower death rates can only partially explain this difference. Researchers are exploring how genetic differences between men and women may impact our disease risk. So as we recap our risk factors, age is the greatest known risk factor for Alzheimer's. An individual's risk for developing the disease increases at age 65. Family history is also a known risk factor. Having a parent or sibling with the disease increases an individual's risk. Risk genes and deterministic genes are the 2 types of genes associated with Alzheimer's. And lastly, Hispanics, African Americans and women are at increased risk for Alzheimer's. In our next module, we're going to look at stages of Alzheimer's disease. No two individuals experience the symptoms and progression of Alzheimer's disease in the same way. If we were to hear this, we would hear how some of the people talk about a different kind of forgetting. One woman speaks about being a voracious reader, but it was a problem because she'd end one chapter and get to the next chapter and not remember what she read before. In losing words, there was a man that was a mathematician, and he too could not remember words. He had trouble even saying this that he was saying. He said numbers meant nothing to him anymore. And then there was a lady that talked about being frustrated with it all. She said she was a type A person, and her thing and the way to handle it was to learn more about Alzheimer's. But it was so very difficult for her because she too liked to do things and she could not remember what she had to do. And then lastly, there's the man that spoke of living for today. Because he knew his cognitive skills were no longer good, he said he didn't try to live 2 days in advance. He said, I live just for today because I can't even remember what's going to happen tomorrow. There is a thing where we were going to hear the experts speak about the different stages. There are 3 general stages for Alzheimer's. It's important to remember that the stages are general, and because each person living with the disease has a unique experience, we can't always neatly place an individual into one specific stage. In fact, some people may exhibit symptoms that overlap stages. However, the stages do allow you to gain a general understanding of the progression of the stage. So as we look at them, they're generally called early stage, which is also known as the mild stage. Functions independently, the person will function independently, but has memory lapses, problems with concentration, challenges performing tasks, trouble remembering new information. My sister that now has Alzheimer's is in the early stage. She still drives. Of course, her daughter and her husband, they're very hesitant to let her go far places, but she can still function. She still cooks. She can still do many things. Then there's the middle or the moderate stage where there becomes more confusion with words. The personality and behavioral changes are more pronounced. My mom was a very gentle, soft-spoken woman. So the time when I was telling her it's time for her to take a bath and she hit me with her cane, oh my God, it was just like there's this other person that I did not know. Forgetfulness of events or personal history, and the person tends to think they're suspicious of many things. They think you're stealing from them, or people that they've known forever, they are not trusting of them. And then, of course, there are the changes in sleep patterns. When you're sleeping, they're up and ready to move, and vice versa. And then in the late or the very severe stage, it will require around the clock care, mostly because they no longer can feed themselves. They tend to be incontinent and able to control their body functions. They're unable to respond to the environment or to hold a conversation. Many times they will be able to recognize you, but quite often they cannot. There are changes in their physical abilities, and they're unaware of recent experiences. Plus, by this point, they lose the function of swallowing, which is many times why people go on feeding tubes or they choose to just not eat. In our next slide, we're going to do a recap of that which we just talked about. The 3 stages of Alzheimer's disease, early, middle, and late, are sometimes referred to as mild, moderate, and severe in a medical context. No two individuals experience the symptoms and progression of Alzheimer's disease in the same way, even if there are two people in the same family. While symptoms worsen over time, people progress through stages at different rates as their abilities change. In our next module, we will talk about approved treatments for symptoms. And I said for symptoms, we're going to start out by seeing what you already know about this. There are several drugs available to slow down the progression of Alzheimer's disease. Do you think, may I go to the next, would you go to the next slide, Kayla, please? There are several drugs available to slow down the progression of Alzheimer's disease. True or false? The answer to that is absolutely false. There is currently no treatment to prevent, treat, or slow Alzheimer's disease. However, several drugs are available to address some of the symptoms. Let's go to the next slide. Dr. Hendricks was going to tell you about there are 3 different drugs that have been approved for the symptoms of Alzheimer's. Some are in the form of a patch, but most are in the form of pills or capsules. They're the cholinesterase inhibitors, and we know them as Aricept, Exelon, and Razodine. And that helps their memory and learning, hopefully. And then there's the glutamate modulators, which is Namenda. And then there's a combination of the cholinesterase and the inhibitors and the glutamate modulators, and that's known as Nemzaric. Of course, you have to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and you work very closely with the doctors to determine what's best for you. It does not slow down the disease. It merely treats symptoms. For instance, if they're getting up in the middle of the night, those kinds of things it will do. In our recap, there are 3 types of drugs that are approved by the FDA to help manage Alzheimer's symptoms: the cholinesterase inhibitors, which is Aricept, Exelon, and Razodine. And then there's the glutamate modulators, which is we know as Namenda, and then the combination of the 2, which is Nemzaric. These treatments only address some symptoms of Alzheimer's in some people. They do not treat the underlying cause of the disease. In our next module, we're taking a look at advancing Alzheimer's research. Yes, that is the great thing that in the last decade, researchers have made enormous strides in understanding how Alzheimer's disease affects the brain, and many recent insights point toward promising new strategies for treatment, prevention, and diagnosis. So what we learned that in the early investigation, they found new ways to treat Alzheimer's, and there are many drugs currently in the research pipeline. They are always recruiting and retaining trial participants to hopefully be used so that they can find out more information. And we're going to talk about that at the end, how even if you are an Alzheimer's person yourself, if you are a caregiver, or if you are someone that is interested, you may participate in a clinical study and or a clinical trial. And in the clinical study, most of the time you don't have to take anything. But if you have Alzheimer's, just as our president was able to use those drugs that no one else got to use because it was a trial drug, you would be able to do this, since we know that ultimately for Alzheimer's, that would be a terminal disease. And lastly, it talks about, as far as the hope for the future, in securing funds for research. If there is no money, we cannot continue to research all that we need for Alzheimer's. Next slide, please. So in the clinical studies, in the clinical trials, test new interventions or drugs to prevent, detect, or treat disease. A clinical study is any type of clinical research involving people, regardless of whether it's testing a specific intervention. But clinical studies can also look at other aspects of care, such as improving quality of life. And we're going to talk about with the trial match. The trial match is generally looking for, they're looking for someone who is already healthy, but you don't have Alzheimer's, to try to find out whether or not that would be something that would work for you. And as the screen says, you can go to alz.org/match, or just go to alz.org, and there's so much information that is there to be gained so that you would know more. To recap, scientists have increased their understanding of Alzheimer's significantly. Participants are needed in order to find methods of prevention, treatment, and we all pray ultimately a cure. People with the disease, caregivers, and healthy individuals without dementia are needed to participate in clinical studies. Both drug and non-drug studies are taking place across the country and online. Clinical studies may provide participants with cutting-edge treatment and additional medical care. Trial Match, which we mentioned earlier, is a free clinical study matching service for people interested in participating in Alzheimer's research. And those people who are most susceptible, women in general, Hispanic and African American women in particular, are always needed. Alzheimer's is difficult. However, no one has to face the disease alone. We're going to learn about a little bit more about the Alzheimer's Association and how all of us can help individuals and families all across the country. As you can see, the purple, which is the color for Alzheimer's, is going everywhere. In all of these areas, there are Alzheimer's associations. Our mission, the Alzheimer's Association, is the leading voluntary health organization in Alzheimer's care, support, and research. Our mission is to eliminate Alzheimer's disease through the advancement of research, to provide and enhance care and support for all affected, and to reduce the risk of dementia through the promotion of brain health. Our vision is a world without Alzheimer's disease. Next. I want to leave with you some resources. These are some key resources for Alzheimer's. This is our 24/7 helpline, 800-272-3900. Put it in your phone, put it up against your wall. You can call anytime. If you are a caregiver and you're just confused about what to do, you can call. If you're the Alzheimer's patient and you're unsure of where you are, you can call. It is there, and there's someone on the end that will be able to help you at any time. The same thing holds true if you were online, alz.org. You can go there. There are a number of resources, even to seeing more videos like this that you're hearing from me. There are lots of webinars that are on the actual ALZ website. And lastly, alz.org/communities that gives you help wherever you are. If you are listening to this and you're in the state of Ohio, you tell them where you are, what your zip code is, and they can direct you to services that will help you there. Alzheimer's can be a devastating disease. The person can be perfectly healthy, still walking in the first two stages, but you need help. Caregiving is also very, very extensive and can be tiring. Next slide, please. There are many ways that you can help. And I just want to be able, I want to tell you that in the fall in Southern Illinois, in the Marion area, as well as in Carbondale, we have an Alzheimer's Walk. Please feel free to call this number, and wherever you are, you can participate in that. Maybe instead you just like to give a donation. Everybody will be glad to have it, trust me, so that further research can be done, so that we can rid ourselves of this disease. If you have any questions, please make sure that you put them in, and Kayla will let us know what we need to do next.
All right. So that was great, Yolanda. Thanks so much for all the wonderful information. We do have a question for you. And the question is, does a person's blood type affect their chances of getting dementia?
That is not something that I've read in any of the studies. No. But I do want to say that as far as this is another education program for another time. There are three things that we talk about that helps to prevent nutrition, what we eat, to stay active, and to stay socially engaged. Try not to just be, and I know it's so difficult now during COVID, but if you could even talk on the phone to someone, have someone to be available, if you walk in your neighborhood or walk back and forth through your home, uh, fried foods and those things, just ice cream, those kinds of things, it has milk in it, but that's probably not the best, something that's nutritional. But no, in answer to that question, no, nothing that I've read said that.
Awesome. So I know you mentioned about diet. What are some foods to keep your brain healthy?
Well, it's kind of like they mentioned the Mediterranean diet, which is full of fruit and vegetables. The diet of what is the one that is for high blood pressure? Off the top of my head, I can't remember what it is, but low salt, um, not eating a lot of high cholesterol foods. I mean, just commonsensical things. And that doesn't mean you can't eat sweet stuff. It doesn't mean you can't have salt at all. But you just want to do everything in moderation. But if you Google Mediterranean diet, believe it or not, it really is very good. One of the things that I hear a lot is that, I'm old. I can't just be walking everywhere. Why can't you just walk around your house? If you can walk from one end of your block to the other end of your block, even if you use a cane, if you just move your feet in your chair, all of those things are great preventive measures.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I always joke with my grandma that she's gonna have to get up and take a lap around the kitchen and back to her chair or something. So that's always good. I mean, you can always move some part of your body, keep it going.
Hey, turn the
Um,
music on and do whatever. If
there
you're
you
the only
go.
one singing it, so what?
So I guess I wanted to kind of ask you, how did you kind of get involved with the Alzheimer's Association, and what if somebody's wanting to get involved with that? How do they kind of go about that?
I went to an Alzheimer's presentation like this, except it was live, and they had the number, that 1-800 number, and it was sometime after my mom had died, and I wanted to be involved. I thought I would be going and filing papers. Imagine my surprise. So there are a number of things you can do. I mean, I'm a community educator, and there are other things you can do. We go to anytime they have like a health show. I have a table. They have people that fill packets if that's what you want to do. I want to educate. I want people to know, since so many African Americans were more likely to get it. I try to promote that. I want people to be educated about what it is we can do while we're still here and we still can remember and write our names.
That's so important. That's great. So in Illinois, I guess, is there any Alzheimer's Association that's close to here, and where are those locations?
The one that's closest to us is in Marion, Illinois. and it's right there on whatever the main drag is. Marion, but when you're going,
Is that like D Young
13,
Street or something?
yes,
Yeah.
if you're going into Marion, you just stay on that street, and it's right over to the on the right. You can't miss it. And the person that's in there is Becky Durant. She's awesome. She is awesome. Any way she can help you, she would be more than happy to do so.
Great, great. So
And by the way, they're always looking for volunteers.
all right. So yeah, if you guys are interested, definitely reach out to them. Uh, I was going to ask Yolandi, do you have anything else that you would like to share about your journey, things you've learned with having family members, or any last words of advice?
You know, the thing that's most important to me, I'm from a family of 12, and I'm number 11. My brother I'm from Southern Illinois. I grew up in Carroll. My brother actually was at home with my mom. He retired from a job in Chicago. And so he was there all the time. I was still working, so I came to give him some respite on weekends. And then in the summer, I was a teacher. I would stay sometimes a week at a time. I think the hardest thing for a caregiver is burnout. Thankfully, we had each other, and my siblings, although they were far away, would often come home and they just gave us time. Sometimes, if you are somewhere far away, give support. That's hard work. It is hard work to take care of anybody with anything. But for Alzheimer's, in my opinion, it's especially hard because you see a person that you love so much changing, and it's like changing before your eyes. So to me, be supportive. That's number one. Number two, take care of yourself. Early on, talk about if someone were to ask you, what can I do to help? Make a list of things they can do to help. If it's cook a meal, whatever it is, I need you to stay here for a minute while I run to the grocery store to get mom, whatever, or just to go walk. My brother skated. He would skate around the park. That was his big thing. That is important for you to be a caretaker, but it's also important for you to take care of yourself. So those to me are very, very important things. And just like they say on the plane, if you don't, when the masks come down, put it on yourself first, then take care of others. It's that way with any kind of caregiving. And then for those people who have someone in your neighborhood that that may be taking care of someone, and you know, be available. And they may say, "Well, I can't think of anything." Mow their lawn. There are just so many things you can do. If you're not, they may, sometimes I think when you have the person that is the patient, you become so, whatever that is, that no one else can do that but you. But you can do something for the caregiver. So if the caregiver had to mow the lawn, take them water. Those things that you think he or she needs, or just send a card. You just be surprised. Some things are little things, but can mean so much for someone who is taking care of other people.
That's great advice. I really like that. Tracy, do you have any questions or anything that you would like to ask?
Yes, as I was listening to this, and thank you, Yolanda. It's so nice to have you do this, and I know it's a passion of yours, so that it drives home the message all the more. I do you know what kind of tests do they do to determine whether or not you have Alzheimer's or dementia?
Well, they do a CAT scan now, and then they also give you like psychological tests where they don't call it that, but they ask you different questions. Um, Early on, it's kind of difficult. My older sister that's passed, was a math teacher, and she was asking the doctor questions back that he didn't know. So, you know, it had to progress before she believed that she had it. But yes, eventually, you know, but CAT scan is one of the things they use because as it talked about the plaques and the tangles, you can see that on a scan, how your brain, that part is affected.
Thank you. The other thing, you were just talking about getting exercise, which makes me think of the times we're in right now and COVID and everybody's indoors, which kind of leads me to one of our classes that is coming up. I got to check what date is it, Kayla? The one we're having about exercise
It's on
during
the
a
19th.
pandemic. Yeah, it's on the 19th. We're talking about exercise during a pandemic. So, or maybe just during the winter months would suffice. We don't need to see the C word anymore than it already is, right? So I encourage you to come and listen to that as well. So, two, you mentioned caregivers. I do sit on a committee called the Healthy Senior Action Team, and that's Becky Dwaren, who is over the Alzheimer's Association down here. She's on that committee, and every year, on a normal year, we do have something called a caregiver retreat, and it's usually in the November time period. Of course, we can't do it this year, but just keep that in mind sometime, because that's exactly why we do that, is to give caregivers a chance to rest for a minute, be treated, take a breather. So that's so very important.
And you know that I think just mentioning that there is an Alzheimer's support group. I want to say it's at Liberty Village. I just think it's so important to talk to somebody. If you're in the early stages, I think that you can become quite anxious just not knowing what it's going to be. Being able to talk and be open with someone makes all the difference in the world. And for the caregiver, I don't journal every day, but I think it makes a difference sometimes where you can write down thoughts that you think you can't say to anybody else. I want to kill him. You know, write that down. Don't say that to anybody. Right? Just write that down. But it just makes a difference just to be able to journal. Find your outlet, those things that you can do, that you like to do, even though you are taking care of someone else. Once again, it has so much to do with you're taking care of yourself as you take care of someone else. It's the same even with your children, but it's just really true. It's necessary in order for you to stay healthy while you're doing that.
And while you're kind of talking about that, I was kind of thinking of a question too. Since you've had family members deal with this, have you ever had any of them share what they were the most nervous or scared about, and how did you guys kind of cross that hurdle with this disease?
Well, with my mom, for so long we didn't know exactly what that was, but once we knew, we didn't have Alzheimer's then. The association, we didn't know about the association. So we had these things that we thought we'd do. I remember one time, my mom was the person that when you came in the house, she goes, "Oh, how are you?" She had no idea who you were. You want to go and cook her something. I know she had dementia then because I don't cook like that. But anyway, we would give her, my brother had this idea that it was a little recording thing that you said, "Well, Mom, you just put this down so you can remember." Well, she can remember to press the recorder. So, those kinds of things, trial and error. But with my sister, it was different. Her son lived with her. Her son is an adult, but he lived an hour away. And once we knew she was no longer able to do that, to stay alone, and she had to go to an Alzheimer's center, I think the thing that's most, when I think about it even now, that brings a lump in my throat is to find that place for her, because we'd gone and we looked at so many, and this was really a good one. But when we went there, she was like a little child. She said, "But I don't want to go here. I don't want to stay here by myself." And that's so hard. And then after she was there for, they encourage you not to come that first week or two so that she would get used to it. But then once we went back the next time, you know, they have activities for her, and we walk in the door, and she'd go, and then she said, sit down, because they had this singing at 10 o'clock, and they always let her sing a song. And so she thought she actually lived in a church. And so she said, be quiet. They're going to let me sing the song. And they would. They let her sing the song. And we take her out. We go to lunch. And this is when, of course, she was doing better. And then she wouldn't want to go back. So she said, but I don't know any of those people. Just that fast, she would forget. And so, you know, what we did, when we'd stay until it was time to eat lunch or whatever the meal was. And when she went to eat, then we would slip off and leave. And she wouldn't remember that you'd even been there. But it's very difficult. And she knows that early on, she'd just say, there's something wrong with my mind. I can't remember things. And then she'd forget that she said that. And she'd tell you that same thing like 5 times in a row. And the hardest thing for you is to say, well, you told me that already. But you don't need to do that, because if she knew, she wouldn't have said that. You know, so you have to make your reality their reality, your reality. So you have to be who they are. And we have a program for that too, by the way.
Awesome. Well, I love the personal touch and kind of seeing what worked for you and kind of going through that. I think that's important for everybody to hear, that they're not alone, and you know, you've got to find out what works for you and your family. So you said that she went to an Alzheimer's facility. Are there specific facilities for people with Alzheimer's or dementia?
There was where she lived. There are nursing homes with a dementia wing. The reflection center that's in Heron, I think that's for dementia patients. That my sister actually lived in a place called Brookdale Alzheimer's Center. That was what it was really called, and it had 3 wings. It had a like a garden in the middle. That's where they could go out into the garden, but of course they could never go out the door. Just to hit the door would not let them out, of course, because they would just walk. They were free, but they were free to walk in their wing, which is really kind of cool. And the people, I liked it because the people got training. They had some kind of training every 2 weeks, the people that work with them. And the family got to meet them. When anybody new that came, you got to meet the people, and they called my nephew and my sister. They were the main contacts to let them know, you know, what her day was like and that kind of thing. So that was really cool. And up until the time when you're no longer able to, they had activities. If you were spry enough and had enough, they took them out to lunch, those kinds of things. So they actually did things. You didn't just sit. It was only when they were in the severe stage that you were basically in a geriatric chair.
That's awesome that, you know, there are places to kind of look into that. So definitely if you or a family member is dealing with that, definitely look for the best place and fit for
They're
you.
just very, very expensive. They're very expensive. And you know, when you're talking about early diagnosis and what you want to happen, where you want to go, who's going to take care of this, who's going to help you, those are all the kinds of things you need to talk about. When they're talking about long-term and critical insurance, critical illness insurances, those are things that you really do need to talk about. We think you're not going to need them, but it is very expensive, very.
Yeah, that is so true. So definitely something to keep in mind as well. So I guess that's pretty much everything we have. Tracy, is there anything, last words you would like to say or anything?
Just to probably thank Yolanda for coming in. She has
Welcome.
helped us many times. She's been a volunteer at Second Act too in the past, so we're good friends. So it's good to see your face. I am just going to give my public service announcement on behalf of the SIH. I said I wasn't going to say the COVID C word, but there it is. Yeah, just letting folks know we are watching the numbers here at SIH. We are having the highest number of people hospitalized for COVID that we have had since this whole thing began for us back in March. And so when our units get full of patients, that makes it harder for us to have beds available for other serious things that are going on. I'm not telling you to not come to the hospital when you have something major emergency. Definitely come. But what we are saying is most of these are not nursing home based patients either. These are community patients. So we are really asking to do your part. Keep masking up. Keep using hand sanitizer. We're hitting flu season, so please get that flu shot. So, and it's all an effort to slow it down, so we're not having such a spike like we are right now. So, and basically, I want you to be safe. So.
Awesome, Tracy. Thanks so much. And thank you so much, Yolanda. It's been great having you on here. And I hope everybody learned a little something. And we can't thank you guys enough for watching our virtual classes. And make sure to sign up for our upcoming ones in November and be looking for our December ones. And I'll leave you guys with that. And I thank you guys so much for being here today. Bye, everybody.
Bye.